Here's how conservatives are going to overrule a law that they made so they can keep polluting. Hey, I'm Nicole, and this is World on Fire, where I read climate news so you don't have to. Today we're going to talk about a thing called Chevron Deference, and I'm going to warn you right now, it has the word Chevron in it, so you're going to think that it's bad, but actually it's good. It's kind of like Snoop Dogg's wine. You'd think it would taste like a hot box trash can, but actually it's a pretty decent red blend. Okay, the term Chevron Deference comes from a legal case. Chevron USA Inc. versus Natural Resources Defense Council Inc. It's a little complicated how we got here, but basically the courts decided that federal agencies like the EPA are staffed full of experts in their field. And because we can't expect every elected official or judge to be an expert in everything, we should defer to those public agencies full of experts when it's time to make and interpret regulation. And that's why, like, Marjorie Taylor Greene can't just ignore NASA and shoot a rocket launcher at the Jewish space lasers. And it's also what gives the EPA the power to regulate stuff. But now, Chevron Deference hinges on a herring! The Supreme Court is hearing arguments in a case called Loper Bright Industries versus Raimondo, which on paper are about a group of commercial fishermen who oppose a government fee that they consider unreasonable. Well, there's your problem. They're fishermen on paper, but they should be on a boat. In 2020, a new program required Atlantic herring fishermen to carry monitors on their boats. And the National Marine Fisheries Service believed an old statute gave the government the power to pass on the cost of the monitors to the fishermen.
This place, they don't cut their pizza and they pass the savings on to you.
And to be fair, $700 a day is a lot of money. That's like a month's rent in Alabama or one Giselle smoothie from Erewhon. Am I pronouncing that right? I refuse to look it up. But hang on a second. The monitoring program is over and the fishermen were reimbursed. And also, they didn't really pass the cost of the monitors onto the fishermen because the cost of the monitors was shared. So why is this lawsuit still happening? And if their profit margins are so slim, where are they getting the money to pay for it? Sexy fisherman calendars? I'm just kidding. Of course, there are evil cartoon billionaires behind it like always, specifically legendary polluter and veneers enthusiast Charles Koch. Chuck and his pals have been at this for years and reportedly emphasized the need to find cases that could be a vehicle for overturning Chevron deference. And not an electric vehicle. They hate those. They've even got their own little propaganda campaign going. The herring fishermen feature prominently on a page offering information on the case, promoted via Google Ads. Yeah, Google is basically for sale to the highest bidder at this point. It's useless. So next time you're trying to search for climate or any other information, maybe try using Bing or like even Reddit or, I don't know, seek out the Oracle of Delphi. She's not flooded with AI bullshit and you might get to see a little titty. It's easy to see why a bunch of billionaires picked these fishermen to represent their case. People are much more sympathetic when they're in a boat that looks like this than one that looks like this. This is a pretty common tactic used by anti-climate crusaders to pretend that they're standing up for the rights of the poor, downtrodden, blue-collar workers, when really, they're trying to get a bunch of evil shit passed that's gonna make oil billionaires even more money. And if you don't believe me that this case isn't actually about these fishermen, believe the Supreme Court, because all they talked about was Chevron deference. Only Justice Sonia Sotomayor even bothered to mention the fish 3 hours and 20 minutes into a 3.5-hour hearing. Now, to be fair, I'm sure Clarence Thomas would have loved to talk about fishing, but mostly to show off his vacation photos.
But wait, there's more.
And even if you do not care about the environment at all, there's still something for you to be pissed off about, because it wouldn't just fuck up environmental regulations. It would also sharply limit the power of many federal agencies to regulate healthcare, finance, telecommunications, and other activities. Awesome. I'm always saying that healthcare, finance, and telecommunications need less regulations. When I'm on hold with my bank because I overdrafted on an $80,000 medical bill and I get hit with 7 spam calls, I'm always like, oh, thank God there are no pesky regulations to stop this from happening. A lot of people don't know about the importance of Chevron deference because, frankly, it's boring legal stuff. Learning a bunch of complicated details about a field that you're not an expert in just so you can understand one legal case is boring and hard and sucks. And that's why we have Chevron deference. Because without it, the judges who would be interpreting these regulations would have to learn all that stuff, and they don't want to do that shit any more than we do. Also, I personally have a hard time believing that the Beetlejuice handjob congresswoman has much interest in learning anything, including what happens in Beetlejuice.
Nice fucking model!
One thing worth noting here is that Republicans have flip-flopped on this issue to suit their own interests. But that doesn't sound like Republicans. In the court case that gave us Chevron deference in the first place, the EPA was actually against stricter regulations, and that's why the environmental group NRDC was suing them in the first place. And the court's rationale for upholding this ruling is pretty fun. Conservative justices, including Antonin Scalia, thought that this would put power back into the hands of elected officials and take it away from liberal activist judges. Of course, the culmination of the last 40 years of conservative public policy has been to install their own activist judges on the Supreme Court. And now that they get to make the decisions, they're like, we weren't talking about us. If the court gets rid of Chevron deference, it's gonna suck real bad. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. But there is one little ray of hope for something that you can do. Washington Representative Pramila Jayapal introduced a bill called the Stop Corporate Capture Act, which would codify Chevron deference, which means the court couldn't overrule it. They're debating it this summer, and believe it or not, this bill has a non-zero chance of passing, although its route through the Senate is gonna be pretty tough. That means you gotta hound your representatives, particularly any Republicans whose seats are at risk during this election. And also, make sure those senators' constituents know that corporate interests are about to fuck up everything. Get on their case and let them know that this is a huge priority for you and everybody in America. And if they are Republicans, make sure to tell them that you don't want any liberal activist judges installed by Joe Hussein Biden to be deciding on regulations. Because that's why Chevron deference exists in the first place. If you're not going to do it for the environment, at least do it so we don't get even more robocalls. I put some links in the description that will help you support codifying Chevron deference. And if you want me to keep you updated on climate news, please hit like and subscribe on this video. And do it while you can, because if the Supreme Court gets rid of the regulatory power over telecom agencies, pretty soon YouTube is going to be a wasteland of scams and hate speech. It what?